Happy Monday night. Busy day today. I haven't posted much since this morning. Um, and I'm doing housework now at 10 o'clock at night. Uh, Super fascinating segment on tonight's Rachel Maddow show. She covered something that has been ping ponging around in my brain for a few weeks now. Um, I've been thinking a lot about federal judges now, for the first time in our nation's history, are dealing with a presidential administration, a Department of Justice, whose lawyers, members of the administration, members of the cabinet, routinely, proactively, and willingly lie to federal judges. And most of these people who are doing this are attorneys. And as an attorney, there are several things that you just do not do. And one of them is lie to a judge, especially a federal judge. You can get disbarred, you can get sanctioned, you can be held in contempt, you can be fined, you can be suspended from practice if it is shown and proven that you have lied to a federal judge. And she went through a couple of examples, and there's one more that I wanted to add. In the Kilargo Garcia case, for some reason, the administration is still trying to deport him. They're trying to deport him to one of 5 different countries in Africa. He has never been to Africa. He has no family in Africa. He, through his attorneys, has said, I'm willing to go to Costa Rica. Attorneys for the administration said, that's not possible. Costa Rica has said they will not take him. Then his defense attorneys got a letter from the appropriate authorities in Costa Rica, said, we've always been willing to take him for humanitarian reasons. We remain willing to take him for humanitarian reasons. That letter had previously been produced to the DOJ. They had that in their possession when the attorneys for the DOJ told the judge that was not possible. Then we have the cases of James Comey and Letitia James. Now, Lindseay Hallan was illegally appointed, the USDA. She completely screwed up the indictment process with the grand jury. She told the members of the grand jury that James Comey would be compelled to testify at trial in violation of the Fifth Amendment. A criminal defendant can never be compelled to testify at trial. Any first-year law student knows that. Then she told the grand jury, don't worry, the government has better evidence than what I've shown you here today, and we will present that evidence at trial, making this case a slam dunk. Lie. Then she didn't show the grand jury the final version of the indictment. They never voted on the final version of the indictment. She just had the presiding juror for the grand jury sign off on it. But most importantly, as this was working its way through the hearing process, yet earlier today, both of those cases were dismissed for these reasons, in part, also vindictive selective prosecution. During the James Comey case, Attorney General Pam Bondi signed a sworn declaration that she filed with the court saying that she reviewed everything that there was to review about the grand jury process and that everything was fine. Then it became clear down the road that it would have been physically impossible for her to have reviewed the grand jury testimony. And the judge said it's impossible for her to have done the things that she said in a sworn declaration that she did. A roundabout way of calling the Attorney General of the United States a liar. Then we get to the case of Customs and Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino in Chicago, who was hauled before the court for some of the abusive tactics that Customs and Border Patrol agents were engaging in Chicago. There was one particular incident that he was called to the stand to testify about, and he did testify about, where he threw a tear gas canister into a crowd of protesters. He testified that he did that in self-defense, that he had been hit in the head by a rock, that the crowd of protesters was violent and had physically attacked him and his fellow CBP officers. There were people in the crowd, however, who had taken video of the incident. None of those things had happened. Greg Bovino then had to admit on the stand that he lied multiple times about the circumstances surrounding that event, because the attorneys who were trying to get a restraining order against this stuff had gotten these videos. They showed videos of a separate event in Chicago that Greg Bovino had also testified about an unruly mob that was violent in attacking Customs and Border Patrol agents when they were leaving their facility, which was gated. People in the crowd had video, showed all the Customs and Border Patrol agents coming out towards that gate, the gate opening, and the crowd was standing there and being orderly and not doing anything. And the CBP agents, officers, immediately started firing pepper balls and tear gas. Had to admit that he lied about that too. This is new territory for this country, where the government, the administration, and the government's lawyers are willingly lying to federal judges on a repeated basis in multiple different hearings, in multiple jurisdictions, in multiple different cases. This has never happened before. I mean, I remember one time, at least a decade ago, I was in a hearing with another attorney, and that other attorney started lying to the judge. And I had documents with me that I could prove that. I had never seen anything like that happen before. I asked the judge if we could approach so that I wouldn't be stating this in open court in front of everybody on the record, because I didn't know what to do. I'd never seen this happen before. So we approached. I told the judge with specificity what was happening. And I said, Your Honor, would you like us to come into chambers or something? And the other attorney was getting pissed, and he was scared because he knew that I knew and that I could prove it. And she said, Counsel, go back to your tables and we're going to proceed. And the judge started questioning me and asked me to produce those documents, and I did. And that attorney got sanctioned $1,000. When you get sanctioned $1,000 for doing something like that in California, it gets reported to the state bar. And the state bar disciplined him for that. He didn't get disbarred, but he got a very hefty fine and was suspended from the practice of law for something like 30 days for one time. These lawyers are doing it repeatedly, day after day after day after day after day. And government witnesses like Greg Bovino are doing it repeatedly. All of these things could very well constitute perjury. Who would prosecute that? The Department of Justice and Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi, who perjured herself in a sworn declaration in the James Comey case. The main concern that I and many others had at the beginning of this administration was that this administration would conduct themselves normally in court, but then simply refuse to obey or follow court orders from federal judges. This is a whole different animal. And because it is happening with regularity, and because it is getting widespread coverage, and because federal judges talk to each other, even if they're in different districts or circuits, I think in the very near future, we're going to see federal judges start to crack down on this kind of shit and start sanctioning these lawyers and holding them in contempt and referring them to the various state bar associations in the jurisdictions where things are going to happen. And I think a lot of these attorneys are going to start to feel some consequences.